Thank you. Tonight I've written a piece on the subject of liminality and how it relates to my experience and my experience of queerness. Central to my experience of life in queerness is the notion of liminality, the state of being in between, at the thresholds and hedges. The very room we're gathered in is called the twilight room. Twilight is time between day and evening. An early term for pain management, especially during childbirth, was twilight sleep, a reference to the state between dreaming and wakefulness. I've always been drawn to animals like monkeys, cats, birds, and rabbits. These animals are not ones of commands and boundaries, but creatures who can circumvent them. The ability to swing from a chandelier by your tail is bound to give you a different perspective. And it's also worth noting that these animals can be read as a bit ambiguous gender-wise, and perhaps that gives them a certain allure. Does it not feel a bit more special when a strange cat allows you to pet them? I was raised an only child of divorce, which is not really considered the ideal situation. I was already not part of the structure of a larger family. However, it did grant me the opportunity to know different types of people I might not have met had my life taken another path. When one is outside the larger society, acceptance isn't a virtue, but a fact of life. One can't exclude anyone truly from the center. I've always been a natural traveler, born with the moon in Sagittarius, the arrow pointing forward. This notion became pronounced when I ended up moving to California with my mother for a few years during my childhood, returning to my father in Georgia in the summer. A bit like the deity Persephone, who I see not as a victim of abduction or a pawn, but an eternal traveler between the seasons on her own hero's journey. Traveling to the underworld is one thing, but the ability to return is rare. The game is hard-won wisdom. And we are approaching autumn, a transitional season between summer and winter, and the equinox, that brief time when light and dark are of equal length. Think of the liminal position of children and elders being closest to the veil between life and death. While our society marginalizes both groups, we also grant them a certain latitude in their behavior. Perhaps this accounts for the special relationship that grandparents and grandchildren can have. Parents enforce rules while grandparents are more likely to help break them. Later, I would miss the typical landmarks associated with heterosexuality, such as marriage and parenthood. It was not a conscious rejection. I didn't drop out because I was never in, only a dubious guest. Fortunately, I was never pushed or pressured in that direction. However, I did manage to hit many of those landmarks on my road to queerness. The first sign was being a theater kid, theater being a well-known haven for otherness. And I was a little ham and have a bit of the performer in me, which explains partly why I'm up here tonight. I experienced the classic Rocky Horror Labyrinth awakening, and my own sexuality turned out to be fluid, not neatly fitting in a particular camp. I have tote bags, but not a single carabiner clip. However, just like those cats and monkeys, those with less patience with changeability might view this as shifty or untrustworthy to fully accept. A box is not a box because it can't make up its mind whether it's a dog or a cat. The fact that they contain both those qualities at once is what makes a fox. I traveled through subcultures when there were such things. Nearly all my young adult life, though peripherally, finding like-minded souls, others who had been othered, gave me a sense of finally belonging. If we couldn't join them, we'd beat them. But I learned that subcultures too have their inner circles. Attempts I made to join organized groups, to recapture that sense of belonging, more often than not resulted in disappointment and disillusionment. Once again, there were still hierarchies and inner circles that I remained outside of. My way wasn't to uphold groups or boundaries, but to move between them. By embracing the liminal, not just as a temporal space, but my natural state, I could discover the light there, like when one can see the light from a room just through a crack in the door. And to paraphrase Quentin Crisp, now I have the answers that an outsider can give. Thank you.